Welcome back to Just Ballin' with JB. This is part two. We're going to go ahead and get it moving and rolling with some fantasy football. So,
Wait, got a one-biter right off the
ooh,
bat, just popping up.
sneaky one-biter.
One-biter immediately. Aaron Rodgers and Nats can't hack it. Lose, lose to the Broncos. What an awful-looking game. 10-9. That's not one you want to watch. But Bo Nix, shout out, 60 yards through the air, pulls out the top. That's a nice, easy day's of work. 60 yards and call it a day. So, ugly one for the Jets all around. Didn't play well. Looked poorly coached. Ugliness.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if you're a Jets fan, are you really any better off with Aaron Rodgers than you were with Zach Wilson? At least you knew what you were going to get with Zach Wilson. Now you think you're going to get something special, and it's same old Jets.
Definitely has to hurt more right now, for sure.
All right, fantasy football. So speaking of football and football teams, Jeff's got a solid fantasy football team going on so far this year. Jeff, you want to share with the listeners maybe a couple tips, tricks, maybe some insight to be good at fantasy football?
Yeah, I mean, a few insights. I don't know if they're actual tips or not, but yeah, 4-0 start. You got to love that. I am still second in total scoring, so I've been able to hang on, but the last 3 games, the scoring has dropped a little bit. So making me a touch nervous. You know, you don't want to be one of those empty 5-0 team where really you're not beating anybody. And then there's been some stinkers.
Shout out Wally 2023.
Yeah, nicely done, Wally. We all saw that collapse in the playoffs coming. But yeah, I got Anthony Richardson at QB. I mean, he gets hurt, leaves the game, comes back in. They call a designed run for him, gets hurt again, and hopefully he's okay. But yeah, 5 points from your quarterback is not good, and could be tough moving forward. So I think I have Aaron Rodgers as a backup right now. That also does not get me all excited. So I might have to see what I'm going to do about a quarterback. Nico Collins came up big for me, saved me. Speaking of the Texans that I was a little hard on, but 33 points for the team, so that was huge. Yeah, it's that's solid. So we got a good start to the year, and hopefully we can keep it going. But you're gonna make a little run here on a decent little streak, is that right?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I was feeling pretty down after the first really 2 weeks. It was a struggle. But I just played a team that was undefeated. They're not the highest team in scoring, but they're on that upper echelon of teams scoring in our league. And I beat them, and beat them by about 20 points. It was a good, strong performance. Kenneth Walker really saved me, honestly, in that Seattle game. He had a fantastic game, put up 33.6 points for me. And I did not have to rely on my kicker and defense to bring me to the promised land, which is probably why I won this week. So I feel pretty good overall. I think we're 2-2 now, and it's nothing but looking ahead from here.
Absolutely. Yeah, should be a fun fantasy season. Hopefully we both can keep it rolling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, let's talk real football. And I think we want to talk a little bit of Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels here. So, they're the 2 rookie quarterbacks that are, making the most noise. Obviously, you've got, McCarthy. He got hurt. Drake May. I mean, he barely plays in that team. I mean, would anyone even know if he played? Does anyone watch New England anymore? I don't think so. And then you've got Bo Nix, who, like you said, he's pumping out 60 yards passing through the air. I know it was a sloppy, rainy game, but that doesn't impress me much in week 4 of the NFL season.
Which Shania Twain always said.
That's right. You got to find a way to quote Shania Twain when you have the opportunity. So we've got Caleb and we've got Jayden. And I think the question our listeners want to know is which team, or maybe questions, which team is in better position going forward with their quarterback and their team? And do the Bears have any regrets taking Caleb and not giving a more serious look at Jayden for the number 1 pick this last draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a good question. It's a legitimate question to consider based on the start and what we've seen. I think it's easy to look at last year. I've heard like maybe it's the number 2 quarterback with CJ and now Jaden. You start hearing that talk. I think the clear thing you can see, to me at least, is Caleb is not Bryce Young. And again, hopefully Bryce Young will get another opportunity and something will happen for the young man. But I think it's clear that Caleb is not that. It's also one of those situations, I think it was incredibly clear cut that he was the number one prospect. I think last year, again, there was a little more conversation of maybe picking one or the other. I think, 99.9 times out of 100, you're taking Caleb and you're rolling with that. I would say I think in the shorter term, so maybe this year, Commanders might actually have a better chance to make the playoffs and possibly go on, some kind of run. Like they obviously are looking better as a team right this moment. Jaden's looking better than Caleb right now in the short term. And we've touched on, their conference a little bit. Obviously the Giants are, pretty much suck. And Dallas has not looked at all like we were expecting. And again, I might even be higher on the Eagles than most people, but they haven't really shown a whole lot to be impressed by yet. So Commanders are leading that division currently. Whereas the Bears, the Vikings are looking like the best team currently playing. These 4 games, they've looked like the best team. The Packers, I think, have looked decent in some moments. Again, it seems like Love needed maybe a tune-up game after his injury, but the Packers have looked pretty good. And then, we both, again, had the Lions in the top 3, 4 as well. So, you got 2 teams from that division in our top 5. It's just going to be harder to come by wins for them as well. So, but all that being said, I think, what Jaden's doing has been awesome. Again, he's not throwing the ball a million times, which credit to the coaching, the game plan, the schemes. That's how to make your quarterback look more successful, limit some of those passes, make those passes easier. And he's doing a great job executing on those. Receivers, run game, all looks strong. The defense looked better than most of us thought. So, credit to them. But also, I like, what I've seen from Caleb. I think this Rams game was definitely, his best game. Again, numbers were not eye-popping by any means. 150 yards in the air, 1 touchdown, but no picks, more efficient. They got the running game going, which we've all, I think, been begging for. It looks like DeAndre Swift finally got a kick in the butt. And so, I think the Bears long-term are going to be in better shape. I do like them in the next, call it 1 to 5 years. But I think the Commanders could actually make some noise this year, maybe even more so than we thought the Bears could do.
Yeah, I think we both like both quarterbacks. I certainly think that Caleb is showing a lot of improvement week over week. Just different things. You're seeing him pick up the offense better. You're seeing him make better decisions. He set the Bears' all-time pass record for a rookie. And, it wasn't a loss, but still, that is an impressive thing that he did in game 3. And then in game 4, you saw him win a football game. He took care of the ball. He did what was needed to be done. He made a fantastic touchdown pass to DJ Moore. Would have had another one if DJ Moore doesn't stop running that route. And I think that, clearly there are signs that the offense just needs more time to gel together. Which, on the flip side, if you look at Jayden Daniels, I think it makes what he's doing all that more impressive because he's in the same boat. He's got a brand new team he's playing on in the NFL. First 4 games of his career. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new head coach there. Everything is different for all the other guys, and everybody's gelling pretty well together. I think they've punted once in the last 3 games. That's an incredible stat. Jayden Daniels is completing over 82% of his passes, 7 touchdowns through the air and on the ground, only 1 turnover. That's awesome. I think the story might be Kingsbury over Waldron. And when the Bears were interviewing for their offensive coordinator position, they apparently interviewed Cliff Kingsbury and decided that wasn't the right fit, and they went with Shane Waldron. And I hope that, the Bears are right, and I hope Shane Waldron is the right offensive coordinator. I have been a little concerned, but I will say I think we need to pump the brakes on the, Bears need to fire their coaching staff conversation that I've seen, on some of these, different sports podcasts and, on TV even, you're hearing that, Eberflus and the coaching staff, they're not up to it. It's 4 games in. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath on the Bears, but I also think we need to look at the Commanders and say, that's how you do it. Because I don't think Jayden Daniels is that much better than Caleb. I think that they are pretty similar in terms of their talent right now. And I think Jayden is just piecing it all together just a little bit better. He is 2 years older than Caleb Williams. So I think that there's something to that. He's played a little longer in college. But I'm wondering if Cliff Kingsbury is the missing piece there. And I was kind of hoping that the Bears were going to go after Kingsbury because he had some time coaching Caleb at USC. Thought it was a good fit. Obviously, I think that if Caleb would have come into the Bears and said, hey, if you're going to draft me and you're looking for an offensive coordinator, I put my stamp fully behind Cliff Kingsbury, maybe Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator in Chicago.
That's true.
I don't know. I haven't read anything that said that, but my gut tells me the fact that Ryan Poles and the Bears were basically dead set on drafting Caleb from day one is that if Caleb would have said, hey, you guys should really hire Cliff Kingsbury, he knows what he's doing, and I give him a full endorsement, I think they probably do. So
Yeah,
I'll be interesting to see it. I think the Bears and Commanders could be one of those, or two of those teams that you want to watch how they perform all season long and compare them to one another. Because I think they're going to be a good comparison. They have similar schedules. The Bears' schedule coming up looks pretty weak outside of the game against the Commanders, and the Commanders' schedule's similar. They play maybe a little bit tougher defenses, but not a lot of great offenses. So I think that we can compare those two over the next 5-6 weeks, and we should get a good sense of, really which team is better off in the short term. And then, in the offseason, there may be a lot of things that change on both teams to improve or maybe derail one of those teams. We'll have to see.
No, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I think we've all talked about coaching quite a bit, and we talked about the coaching carousel, and I agree. I think we've all come too quick to firing coaches and moving on and doing stuff. Obviously, I think the Bears is a bit of carryover from last year, similar like a Nick Sirianni. It's not just being 2-2 this year. It's not whatever. It's some of the past stuff as well. But I think, too, people got to understand when you have these new pieces, when you have these different things, I mean, when your quarterback is the main piece, is brand new, there should be a little bit of this growing pain stuff. And even if the coordinators can watch all the film they want, they can think they know the player that's coming in, but until you're seeing that stuff live, I mean, they talk about coming out of training camp, playing against your own team, going to a new team. Playing a different team is such a big difference. Like looking at film and thinking you know how to scheme things up, it's going to be very different. And so I think as long as you are seeing that progress, which again, it's not just Caleb's numbers, it's the offense as a whole. I mean, it's 24 points, the most points that the Bears had scored all year. I guess they did that against the Titans as well, which, again, if Will Levis
one of those was
a
defensive
in
score
the end zone, it doesn't count. So I think they've looked considerably better as far as the scheme and being in better positions and all that stuff going together. I agree. I mean, Kingsbury, I've heard some really good stuff, but then also some like really bad things as well about him. So I don't know one way or the other, but I do agree that Caleb wanted him. I'm sure they could have had him. He's maybe gelling and it just seems to be a better fit. I think most of us can agree on pretty much all sports, but how you fit in, you could be a different player. I mean, on a different team with different coaches. Justin Fields might be doing it right now. I mean, we'll see. That'd be another one to throw in this little group and see how Fields does, because that would be a good indication of how poorly he was coached maybe. But yeah, I think you got to give credit absolutely to the Commanders. Jayden Daniels looking great, starting off hot. That's awesome. Give them a lot of credit. I wouldn't be overly down on the Bears. It hasn't been excellent to start, obviously, but I do think you're seeing strides in the right direction across the board. Caleb getting more comfortable, the play calling getting a little bit better. So I think we got to give it a little bit of time before we just end it. Let people gel together. Let people figure out where is the line a little bit slower. I think even the people who want to blame, Caleb and put on him, you have to admit the line has been definitely holding them back a tad. I think they'll get there. I think it'll be good. I think the long-term future is very bright. But yeah, the Commanders definitely could go on a little bit of a run here, a lot more than I think any of us expected, especially in that division with the Eagles and Cowboys. So.
Yeah, I've been really impressed. I think that both of those quarterbacks are doing it a little differently. Obviously, Jaden's doing it by never throwing an incompletion, basically. And Caleb's doing it by, showing us the growing pains and showing us, how you get up after you get knocked down. And I think that the Bears are going to be all right. And I don't have the Bears as a Super Bowl contender this year, But do think that they've got a chance to make the playoffs. I think they're in maybe the toughest division in football, especially if the Vikings and the Lions are as good as I think they are, and we think they both are pretty good teams.
Yeah.
To varying degrees. So it's going to be pretty tough, and that still leaves out Green Bay, who is a solid team. I mean, they won a playoff game last year. On the road, almost knocked off San Francisco. So Bears are in a tough, tough division, but fortunately, they've got a little scheduling breakup coming up here. Play the Panthers, they play the Jags, they play the Cardinals and the Patriots, and they play the Commanders smack dab in the middle of that. So I'm going to guess they're going to be favored in maybe 4 of those 5 games. If they can win 4 of the next 5, all of a sudden they're 6-3 and they're looking really good. Obviously, we got to take it 1 week at a time though. But I think both teams should be very happy with their decisions, and hopefully Waldron continues to improve as an offensive coordinator so that we can see more improvements from Caleb, because he's got it. You can tell he's an NFL quarterback. You can tell he knows the offense. He knows how to play. He just needs a little bit more time. And I think we sometimes forget when we see CJ Strouds and Jaden Daniels that, like you said, that's not how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to be bumpy. That's why so many of the great quarterbacks say you should sit for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's going to be helpful for you to sit for even a short period of time and learn. And neither one of these guys got the opportunity to sit, or on the flip side, they got the opportunity to play right away. And they're both taking advantage of it, I think.
Yeah, they, both a lot of potential there. I mean, speaking of sitting and that being, potential positive, you mentioned Drake May is in that spot. A.J. McCarthy, unfortunately, is sitting, not by choice, but is doing that. We didn't hear what you thought about Penix. He didn't get included in the conversation, so that was a hope that he would be, or a thought, an overreaction, underreaction statement that he'd be getting a starting gig by week 4. It's week 4, and so far it's not happening. What's your thoughts on that? Are you sticking by it? You getting off of that opinion, or what are you thinking?
Well, so obviously I was wrong about the timing for sure, because there's basically no chance that they bench Kirk Cousins coming into this next week. I still think that if I'm the Falcons, evaluating Kirk week by week, to just kind of make some notes here, because I don't think he's looked very impressive. I think their offense has looked okay. Their defense has actually, in my opinion, looked better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And I think that they do have some good weapons. I don't know that Kirk Cousins is the guy to lead them there, and I really don't believe that. I think that he's just not capable of it. I mean, you're seeing what's happening in Minnesota. You put a better, more athletic, stronger arm quarterback in that system, and they're blowing out everybody. I think Penix is that guy in Atlanta. So the question is just really, how long does Atlanta wait? And I do think that the success of Tampa Bay may put some more pressure on Atlanta. If Tampa Bay keeps winning, and if they win the games against the Falcons, that's definitely going to you're going to start to get that sense. Obviously I was wrong about the timing. I still think I'd be shocked if Penix isn't starting by the end of the season, though. I just think that if I'm the Falcons, this is not a Super Bowl contending team that you have right now with Kirk Cousins as quarterback. And you don't know if your ceiling is as low with Penix. In fact, I would argue that your ceiling is probably much higher with Penix. The floor could be a little lower, potentially. He is a rookie, of course. But I loved Penix in college. I thought he was fantastic. And I think he's going to be really great. So I just want to see him play. And I think that Falcons fans are going to start getting a little antsy here, especially if the Falcons lose a couple games that they should win. I think you're going to start seeing a little pressure in Atlanta to make a QB change. But as of right now, I was wrong. If we were doing like a Colin Cowherd, where Colin was wrong segment, it'd be where Jordan was wrong. And I'll eat it.
Yeah, timing obviously was off. I think that was kind of our conversation early was, would it happen that quickly? Was going to be the tough part of it. But I think you're right. I mean, I think the big thing we mentioned early on too is maybe some internal conversations, players getting frustrated. I mean, like a Kyle Pitts would be a great example. I don't know how highly they look at him in the locker room. Is he well respected? Do they take his opinion to heart, or do they think he's a young kid who doesn't know anything? I don't know. But I think we all agree the fact that his numbers are what they are is shocking. I mean, it's incredible that that's where things are at. So I still think there's the chance of that. If people are struggling, if the team, obviously success is going to have to go in line with that. But, if they're not seeing incredible success and some of the players start bringing up those conversations, maybe. But I think to your point, it's going to be more so depending on the rest of the division. I mean, I was looking at, preseason, Falcons were plus 100 to win the division. Tampa Bay was plus 300, New Orleans plus 340, and Carolina plus 1,000. So Atlanta was, pretty significant favorite. I mean, Carolina, do they get a second one? Are they 2-2 or they're 1-3?
They're 1-3.
Yeah, so obviously they're not a very good team, but they got to win with the Red Rocket, and, we'll see if they can pull out a few more. But I think the Saints look pretty solid. Obviously, we both like the Bucs, have them in the top 8 right now. So I think, to your point, yeah, if those other teams are kind of doing fairly well and the Falcons are sticking in like that third place spot, I don't know if it's half the year, halfway through the year, but at some point you're going to say, okay, Penix has gotten some really good reps behind Kirk's gotten to learn from there. We're not where we thought we'd be at this point. Maybe let's throw them in there and do it. Even if it's under the pretense we're chalking up the season, like let's get our rookie in there. We want Kirk to have a little more rest time, even if they kind of do that for marketing purposes. That way, if he comes out and sucks, Kirk can still start at the beginning of next year. If he comes out and he's fantastic, it's like, see you later, Kirk. We got our guy, and it's been justified on the field. So that's probably, I think, an opportunity. And again, whether it's halfway through the year, 3/4, you probably it's got to be in the second half of the year to use that kind of excuse. But yeah, I think it's possible by year end. But yeah, definitely, like you said, some crazy would have to happen on the next couple nights for Penix to get the week 4 start. But
yeah. But on the flip side, your call with the Steelers appears to be a little what do you say, reminiscent? Is that the right word? Like you knew it was going to happen.
Like you knew it was going to happen. Yeah, that could be right.
It happened just like you thought. So why don't you tell us kind of what's going through your head? How do you feel about your Steelers pick?
Yeah, obviously, like you said, the goal was 3-1 after week 4, so that did happen exactly. So that's great. 3-0 going into the week 4 game against the Colts. I thought maybe they could even be 4-0. So obviously that's a little disappointing. I think it was kind of that perfect time where we've been expecting it from like the Vikings to have that letdown game. Kind of perfect timing for the people who don't believe in the Steelers to be like, that's, who we thought they were. That's probably more like what it's about. For me, I mentioned early on with a couple of the top teams, people have laid an egg. They've had a pretty big dud game throughout the year. If you're 3-1 with one dud game, not terrible. If you're 2-2 with one dud game, even you lost one that was just a good game, I think we're still seeing that the team can be solid. So, yeah, because of the expectations we had for the Steelers coming in, they're not going to get off that easy. They're going to have to do a little more work to convince, the rest of people out there. But I mentioned early in the segment when we ranking the top 8 teams. I think for that game to go the way that it did was about the best and worst case scenario. They lost the game, which is unfortunate against the Colts there, but they lost by a field goal. So it was a close game. They didn't get blown out. They played tough. They hung in there the whole time. Justin Fields played probably his best game, I don't know, possibly ever. He threw for 312 yards and a touchdown through the air, and then ran for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, it was a heck of a game for him, which if you asked anybody going into that game, what's your biggest concern about the Steelers? It'd be the quarterback. It'd be Justin Fields. So for him to play that well, I thought was great. The defense just seemed to have an off game, which I think, can happen, whether it's offense, defense, or the entire team. You can have an off game. I think the defense just, had a little bit of an off game. Anthony Richardson going out and subbing him in, with Joe Flacco, like almost the exact opposite type of quarterback, probably threw off the game plan a little bit. So, I give him a little bit of grace there. They're still got the number 2 defense in the NFL, even after that game. So I feel really good about that defense. I think they just had a bad game. Really positive to see Justin Fields play that way. I think he's right there to officially knocking off the Russell Wilson noise. Maybe he does go to Miami, something we've talked about that prior, but I think Fields is going to get locked in. I really like where they're at. I'm obviously a lot higher on the Ravens now than I was, 2 weeks ago, but I think the Bengals are going to be absolutely toast. Cleveland's been toast, it seems like, all year. So I like where they're at. I probably should have looked at maybe another projection for them, so I'll do that for next week, is maybe see halfway through the year, where I think they can be at, or, maybe even the full year. Give them a little projection for the future on them. But I like where they're at. Exact start I could hope for. I like where they're heading.
Yeah, I think it was a good call. And we might have just a little bit more Pittsburgh talk coming up here in our next segment, which is games we are watching this week. But I'm sorry, before we get there, I think we've got another one-biter. As it turns out, Gonzaga set to join the refreshed Pac-12 in 2026. And if you are wondering to yourself, no, Gonzaga still does not have a football team. So they're going to be in all sports except for football. So the Pac-12 is still looking for another team, university out there that would like to participate in their conference in lieu of Gonzaga's football team. So I don't know if there's any, Midwest, maybe West Midwest teams that are looking for a spot in the
I heard
Pac-12.
there was that team was a Bishop Sycamore, I think, was looking to join a team.
I do think they're without a conference right now.
BS High, yeah. So maybe they need to give them a call and see if they'll fill in that spot. I think they'd be definitely open to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I guess it's big news if you are a Gonzaga person or Pac-12, but outside of that, I think it's not a whole lot different than the West Coast Conference that they were already in, just with schools that you've heard of now.
Yeah, well, best of luck to them in there. Maybe people pay a little more attention throughout the regular season. We'll see. I mean, respect them. They've been a great program, but yeah, we'll see what people take away from the new conference.
Yeah, got to wait till 2026 though. But
yeah,
what you don't have to wait till 2026 for is some great games this upcoming weekend. And let's just start talking about some games we're going to be watching. College is a little light this week, I would say, unless you're a diehard, right? There's College game day is going to be at Berkeley for the first time. Miami's playing there. I don't think that's going to be much of a game. The one game that I would circle on my Saturday, which is an early game, you can watch it at 11 a.m., is Mizzou at Texas A&M. Last time we saw Texas A&M on the national stage, they got beat by Notre Dame at Texas A&M. This time, Mizzou comes in undefeated. I believe they're in the top 10 right now. High expectations. They've got a really easy SEC schedule this year. So this is one of their tougher games. They have this game, they host Oklahoma, and they go to Alabama. All three SEC games, but those are their top three games. The rest of their games are pretty, reasonably easy for being in the SEC. So this is a big game. If Mizzou wins that game, well, now they're looking at having a pretty solid record likely. So we'll see. A&M's bounced back nicely from their opening week loss. So I'll be watching that game on Saturday. Again, another one of those measuring stick games early in the season. You kind of see what both teams are made of. And it'll give us a sense of maybe where the rest of the SEC is going to fall this year.
Yeah, definitely an interesting one. Like you said, bit of a letdown after Alabama, Georgia last week, and not too exciting. I would say, you want a little action prior to the NFL starting at noon, at least Central Time. 11 a.m. start is great. But the NFL has a game in London this week as well, so you don't even have to tune into the college if you don't want. You can run NFL at 8 a.m., I think it is here, Central Time. But that's not necessarily a game to watch. The one I got definitely circled for the NFL is Buffalo-Houston. So going through it, only game that has two of the top 8 teams that we had in there. I know Houston was right on my edge. That ended up being our draft list, top 8. So that should be a really good one. Houston, I'd like to show me a little something more. Like I said, I haven't been as impressed impressed with their wins, even though they are 3-1. Give them credit for it, but haven't been as in with the victories. So I think this could be a good one to see how they perform against Buffalo. Again, I think Buffalo's defense has been a little shaky, so Houston should have a nice offensive performance. And then let's see how Buffalo bounces back. Definitely could have just had a bad game. Ravens were a little more desperate. Absolutely possible. Let's see how they bounce back. See if they can come out. I think it should be two teams that really kind of want to show where they stand in the league. Are we a top 5 team, top 4 team? Are we one of those top teams? So I think that should be a really good one Sunday at noon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. I think both teams, we should get their best, right? And if it ends up being a blowout one way or the other, then I think we know that one of those teams might have been a fraud.
Yeah.
I think that neither team can afford to come in and have a dud. They need to get things back on the right track. Both of them do. And this is an important game because they're also conference rivals. They could meet in the playoffs. They need to come out and show that they can handle each other. So love that game. Other game I've got on for Sunday at noon is Baltimore at Cincinnati, which I think is going to be a really interesting game. I like Baltimore in that game, but it's at Cincinnati. Those two teams always play each other tough. And if Cincinnati's going to save their season, this is the game they've got to do it, because they cannot afford to get beat by Baltimore at home, drop to, I believe they'd be 1-4 then. So that's going to put them in a really tough spot. You can't be 1-4 with, you'd have Pittsburgh at 3-1. Baltimore would then be 3-2. So you're going to have two teams with a winning record ahead of you. And the Browns are the Browns. I'm not sure that Cincinnati cares to compete with them, but Cincinnati struggles to beat the Browns, even when Cincinnati's good. So I think Cincinnati, this is a must win for them, which I think should make it a good game, because I don't think Baltimore can really afford to come in and just chill and lose it. I think they're going to come in being like, no, we got to win this game too. Like, we still feel like it's a must win. So I'm expecting a hard hitting brawl here. And I expect Baltimore to win it, but I do think that'll be a good game.
Yeah, I hope it is a good one. I mean, I personally believe Cincy is done. Now that might be a little early, and like I said, I mean, if they happen to win this game, I guess they probably actually do have a decent chance to save the season. I guess I'm looking at it similarly as your end result. I think Baltimore is going to win this one. I'm more curious what would really deflate them more, an absolute blowout if the Ravens come in and just wreck them. They just, do we feel everyone is like, okay, we agree they're all toast. They feel like they're toast. Or would it be more demoralizing to have a good, hard-fought game that you lose, and it's like, we needed that game. We absolutely needed that game, and we lost in heartbreaking fashion. I don't know which one would kill them more, but I think either way, they're dead. That's me personally. Like I said, Baltimore still needs to get a win. That was a great win they had last week. They are not in the clear by any means. There's no letdown at this point that they can afford. So they need that game, and I think they're looking really good. I like what I saw last week. I just don't see him losing this game. So, yeah, more curious about which way Cincy prefers to die, with the hard, really, painful one at the end of the game, lose on a field goal, or just getting lit up from the beginning. But I'm hoping it's the former, so it's a close game. It'd be great to see these two battle it out and see what happens.
Yeah. You got one more game, NFL game that you've got circled on your calendars?
Yeah, I'd like Dallas-Pittsburgh game. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Pittsburgh, so we kind of know the thoughts and feelings on seeing them. But I want to see how they bounce back, right? I mean, after that loss, that's, again, could just be the one-off bad game that they play, but I want to see that kind of shown next. I want to see them come out and play what we think to be is a decent opponent. Obviously, we've seen the struggles Dallas has had and their issues, and, I think most of us have come down on our expectations of them. And maybe they are just a bad team this year. It's very possible. But what we've seen the last 3 years in the regular season from them, without a whole lot of changes to the lineup, we all had some higher expectations. So I want to see how Pittsburgh bounces back after, kind of a bad loss there to the Colts. See if Dallas has made of anything. But I mentioned, Pittsburgh number 2 defense, Dallas number 28 defense. But Pittsburgh offense is near the bottom of the league. Dallas has actually been, I think, top half of the league at least. So kind of a flip-flop in styles there. Yeah, see if Pittsburgh is smart enough to run the ball down their throats and just get a nice win over, again, at least a fairly well-respected regular season team. That one could be a good battle.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that this is Pittsburgh's coming out party to the country. It's Sunday Night Football. Everyone's going to be tuned in. You're going to get all the Dallas faithful watching this game. And if Pittsburgh lays it on them pretty good, especially bouncing back from that tough loss to the Colts, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more talk about the Steelers being a real contender this year. And I also think you're going to get a lot more talk about Fields versus Caleb Williams in upcoming, weeks and months into the season if all of a sudden he balls out on Sunday night. And I'm with you. I thought Dallas would, maybe I think we disagree a little bit on this part. I thought Dallas was going to be a better team this year than they are. I thought they were basically going to be similar to last year where they were a really good regular season team, but wouldn't necessarily trust them in the playoffs. And after the first 4 weeks of the season, I'm not confident that Dallas is better than right in the middle of the NFL. Yeah. I think if you are a team that is in the top half of the NFL, even if you're at the bottom of that, you are going to beat the Cowboys. And I think if you were in the bottom half, you are going to lose to them. They beat teams that they should beat, and they lose to the teams that it's a toss-up or that they're not favored against. And I think that's going to happen Sunday night. But if Dallas wants to, send a message that, hey, we aren't this bad team, we are more like the team last year where we can win football games, then this is a game you feel like you kind of have to win. The Commanders are getting hot. The Eagles have been so-so, but, all of a sudden, if the Eagles start rattling off some wins, we talked about it on the last pod, Dallas's upcoming schedule is brutal. So you can't really afford to be like, well, we will mail it in on this game and we will win the next one, because the next one's against the Lions. And then they've got at the 49ers, which they never win that game, and at Falcons versus the Eagles versus the Texans at the Commanders. It's a gauntlet that they're about to go through. And I'm wondering if this is the beginning of the end for Mike McCarthy. Because if they go 0-6 in the next 6 weeks, I find it hard to believe he still has a job come 2025. So I think that's the game to watch. I totally agree with you there. Last thing I'll say in terms of games to watch, and we don't really talk a lot of baseball on this podcast, but MLB playoffs start this Tuesday. So if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, the playoffs have already started. That's a great time to watch some baseball. If you've been wanting to watch a little baseball but want to watch meaningful games, playoffs are always a lot of fun. So tune into those. There's a lot of games now. They've expanded the playoffs. It should be fun.
No question. Yeah, it looked like there was quite a few upsets already in the wild card games today.
Yeah, a few.
In baseball terms, if that's, a huge, huge deal, as much in baseball as it is in some others. But yeah, higher seeds getting quite a few wins today from when I looked at scores. Baseball's always a lot more fun come October.
That's right. All right. Well, before we wrap this part 2 up of episode number 4, we got to do our locks of the week and update everybody on where we are at in picking these locks. As a reminder, this is not financial advice, but it is great advice. So go ahead and lock these picks in. But before we give you the picks, let's recap how we did last week. Jeff got on the board with his first correct lock. I think he was on the right side of it in week 1. Things fell poorly. Week 2, totally wrong side, just like my week 1. And now he's back in the win column with Chargers plus 7.5. Great call on that game.
Yeah. It's nice to get on the board, get a win. I almost think this one should count as double. After I made the pick last, felt good about it, and then I'm reading that Alt and another starting lineman are out, so 2 starting linemen are out. Herbert's got a high ankle sprain, might not even play in the game. I was about to send you a video that we could maybe throw into the pod later to say, hey, I'm changing my pick for fair reason, all these injuries. But then I thought about it, it feels like one of those games where even they're the kind of low man with all these injuries, things are out, that they actually put up a good fight against obviously the defending champs and who we got the number one in the rankings. So I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to keep this pick. I'm not going to need the excuse of injuries to get out of it. So like I said, could be worth, a double or maybe a half point later in the year if it matters. No, nice to get on the board. Good game for the Chargers given the injuries. To lose by a touchdown to them, that's kind of what we thought might happen. Field goal, touchdown. Probably we're still going to lose, but cover the spread, and that's what matters there.
That's right. It was a lock.
Absolute lock. Yeah, never was actually worried about it.
That's
you had a nice one in the college game.
I did, yeah. I dipped into the amateur ranks, although I don't know if we can call them amateur anymore now that the NIL exists. But, I spotted that one a mile away, honestly. I mean, it started at plus 17.5. I called it at plus 18.5. And I think by the time the game kicked off, it was Illinois plus 19.5 was the bet that you could have grabbed there. And, Illinois looked like I expected them to look. They're a decently coached team, not as much talent as Penn State. Penn State wins by 2 touchdowns, 14 points. Illinois covers. I think that one was, I wasn't sweating that at all at any point in time during that game. We're going to typically stick to more professional, but, when I spot a lock, I am going to share it with the people. I am not going to hold that in and be greedy. I want to give, share the wealth with the world. So you need to listen to these locks, because now that we are 3-3, we feel just like the Baltimore Ravens. Got off to a slow start, but now we're starting to run the ball. So
Derrick Henry
to get into the winning category here, to move on from just breaking even. How are we going to do this week with our locks? Do you have a lock that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, we mentioned, I had a couple written down. I think the one I want to go with, I already mentioned it briefly, but I think since he is done, I just don't see him getting through this. I think they've gotten, I don't want to say lucky, but they've been fortunate that they've been able to start 0-2 and turn things around in the rest of the season. I think Baltimore is as good as we thought they were coming into the year. Again, you lose to the Chiefs night one is not a bad. No one's ever going to look at that as a bad loss. They played a solid game. So that's, nothing I even think about. One bad game against the Raiders that you definitely shouldn't lose that game. But since then, I think they've looked really good. Again, most were really high on the Bills. They just took them out easily. Wasn't even a challenge. 38-10, whatever it was. So they're putting points on the board. They're holding other teams. The defense is looking good. It's 2.5. So got a field goal. Ravens minus 2.5. I just think, I think since it's time to officially mail it in. We've been kind of questioning here. A win over the Panthers did not tell me that they're getting back on track, where the Ravens just showed me that. And again, they're not in any spot to let up. They're not in any spot to have a letdown game. So I think they got to come out, play just as hard. And I just think they're better than Cincinnati. So assuming you get 2 good games from both teams, I think the Ravens take it. 1 field goal score, lock it in, minus 2.5, baby.
I like that one. That was not one of the ones that I had, but is interesting. I think I generally like the pick. I'd probably stay away from that one because of Cincinnati's back against the wall mentality, do or die. It is a must win game for Cincinnati. So, I'm always nervous about betting against those teams that have absolutely nothing to lose, and they're going to, go out there and play they're going to play to win the game because they have to. So we'll see how that one shakes out. But I do like Baltimore in that game. My lock of the week this week, and I was going back and forth between really 2 different games, and both of them are kind of different sides. But the game that I am going to lock in on is Seahawks-Giants, Seahawks minus 6. And I like that for a lot of reasons. The first reason is Seahawks just, lost a game that I feel like, even though the scoreboard looked a little broader, I think Seahawks feel like they could have won that game. I think they made some questionable calls at the goal line late in the game, maybe a little poor clock management there at the very, very end. Also, they were missing, a bunch of defensive starters. So probably a big reason why, the Lions were cooking them on defense all day long. But I think that, that Seahawks offense is humming along. I like their coach. I like their team overall. They're playing the Giants, who are flying across the country to play in Seattle. And they're probably going to be without Malik Neighbors. I haven't heard any official updates yet, but he did go into concussion protocol in the last game. So, it would not shock me if they sit him out just as a precautionary measure, even if he's cleared at the last minute. And I just don't think the Giants are any good. And I think, if you're betting on that game and you can get the Seahawks for less and you're giving less than a full touchdown, I think that's one you take. Teams traveling across the country typically struggle in those games. And even though the Giants have a few extra days off from their game last Thursday against the Cowboys, I think that's a game that has Giants travel across the country, get smacked around, head back home, wonder what they're going to do about Daniel Jones written all over it. So I like the Seahawks in that game. I like them by a full touchdown or more. Honestly, I think the Seahawks are going to win that one by double digits. I don't think it's going to be shockingly close. I think the Seahawks are going to kind of get out to a fast start, and they're going to put some points on the board because that's what the Seahawks do this year.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was just to see if Neighbors is playing. I think if he does not play, you're probably spot on with it. His usage has just been out of this world. Normally you talk about over usage for a running back, but it's borderline at that point for receiver. And I mean, he's in concussion protocol, so whether that was going to happen, regardless of how many passes he got, who knows. But I think if he doesn't play, I can see that. I just looking at it, and I don't know if the Giants are as bad as we think. I mean, they lost to the Vikings first game, which now we're saying, oh, hey, the Vikings are actually a really good team and they're blowing everybody out. They lost to the Commanders by a field goal, and we're all liking the Commanders a heck of a lot more now. They did beat the Browns, as they should if they're not an absolute terrible team. And then, they lost to the Cowboys by 5. Again, sounds like you're quite a bit down on the Cowboys from where they're at. I just can't really envision them being, that bad of a team based on what we've seen the past few years and having nearly the same roster. But even if they're middle of the pack, you lose by 5 points, it's less than a touchdown. If they're middle of the pack, that tells me the Giants are close to middle of the pack, or they could be. And if I think the Seahawks aren't in the top 8, they're not far off from the middle of the pack. I don't know. I think if Neighbors is there, he had a chance to put up a fight. But I think if he's out, I think that lock will be feeling a lot cozier at that point because he's a workhorse for them.
Well, y'all heard it here first. So lock these picks in, and we want to hear how much money you're winning. By the end of the season, we're going to have racked up a lot of wins, and even if it started off a little sloppy, it's going to look really good when the season comes to completion. So absolutely, those are the locks. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up part 2 of episode 4. Thank you as always for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can hit the bell if you want to be notified when our episodes come out. That's a great way to kind of just get that information to you. We're trying to get it out on a consistent basis, but we're learning, we're figuring it out. So at some point we will have these out on a very consistent day and time, but we expect this out, Wednesday, Thursday of every week. And also, quick sneak peek, stay tuned and look out for us on Instagram and Twitter. You're going to find that we're going to be a little bit more active on social media, and we're going to be sharing some little clips of the pod. We are going to share some takes and maybe even some live tweets, live Instagram reels, things like that, where we can share a little bit of our thoughts kind of as the season goes in midweek. So just be looking out for Just Ballin' with JB on Instagram and Twitter. But with that, we'll wrap this up, and appreciate you listening.